So this is the Game Day on Rocky Top podcast, episode 187. Um, that noise you just heard was, I think, a 5-year-old Ukrainian who didn't want to go to bed upstairs. Um, so she may make an appearance through the ceiling here momentarily. Um, also, as we were setting up for this, our connection kind of got a little funky once in a while. I believe that's because we have a family of 5 Ukrainians living with us, plus my father in the basement. So we got 2 TVs streaming video. The 12-year-old boy is streaming video games, I am almost certain. And the father is watching Russian movies or movies in Russian language. And we're streaming live to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So if we are stretching here is what I'm going to say. But if we get pixelated, if we freeze, if the audio turns weird, just know that you are standing with the good people of Ukraine and making sacrifices for them. So, like I said, this is the Game Day on Rocky Top podcast, episode 187. And that's really all I have prepared because I've been like busy since the game ended. And so I just figured we'd spend the next 60 minutes talking about UT Martin and how we're going to beat them. And no, we're not going to do any of that. We're not going to probably mention them again. This is supposed to be warm-ups, as you can see down there in the little thing down there. So, by the way, I usually introduce Will by this time, and I've totally forgotten that. So this tells you how prepared I am. We're running the 15-second offense right now, except we don't do it like Tennessee. All right. So this is Will. Will, how you doing? You got something to say about warm-ups?
I'm great. Well, I was going to say, first of all, I love that anybody, if they're watching this later, if it actually started when it started, that the first thing, if you missed Joel being confused by the sound of what sounded like someone falling down upstairs in his house, I like that it also might just start with us laughing so hard, because that is the perfect, like, that's pretty much maybe not your professional life or mine right now, but in UT fandom life, like last week's episode was things are pretty great, and this week is just laughter.
Just laughter.
Yeah, because
things are really great.
Well, and think about all the times, which have not been many, but have been a handful, where we've come on and we've made the joke about, well, this is episode 154, and we've been waiting for a conversation like this, and then either Tennessee lost that game, or just wasn't ready to take the next step.
Yeah.
Or whatever we said in 2016. But see, now, like, all there's such just a nice, tidy break. And for years, I think that is what Tennessee has needed, is here's when it was good, here's when it was bad. And the break we were looking for was supposed to just be, it ain't bad no more. But we have jumped clear over that hurdle into a whole other set of conversations that are frankly hilarious. So laughter is a great thing. And let me say what I was going to say about warm-ups. I was in the building Saturday night, very an affirming week for anyone, if your household is like mine, where you've written a check for season tickets for a lot of years, and you and your loved one or whoever else is in your bank account have looked at each other and made some deep eye contact before you sign the check, and all that's a very gratifying experience. And I mean, I'm 41. I'm not a young man, but if things go south for Tennessee for the rest of my life, I'll think about, this is why you keep your tickets. This is why you hang on. This is why you stay with what's going on. And lots of people did that. What I was going to say is 25 minutes when the teams came off for warmups, 25 minutes before kickoff, teams come off, bands Pride of the Southlands going into formation to start the pregame. There were more people in there, not just in the building, but in their seats. There were more people in their seats 25 minutes before kickoff than were present at entire games, at least at the start of last year when only 82,000 came to the pit game. Not the COVID year, obviously, but I guarantee you there were more people in their seats ready to go 25 minutes before kickoff than were present for an entire game in multiple years. So people were ready. I've made the joke with lots of my friends and will continue to make it that one of the surest ways you knew we were back is the number of people who brought a cigar. People came prepared to win, and we did. And it's just great. There may not be a lot of structure in these next 60 minutes to 6 hours that we'll spend together, because we were saying we could talk about this game for years and not touch it all. But it's pretty great. And thankfully it is Tennessee Martin this week, so we can at least talk about this game for the rest of this one. Before we move on to that's the rite of passage that you keep winning, they keep getting bigger. So I do not wish to intentionally disrespect the Kentucky Wildcats, who last time they were in Neyland Stadium, that was a very bad day. But Tennessee and Georgia are one upset or a couple votes changing away from playing a 1-2 game in 3 weeks. So, like, when we say even bigger things are out there, that would be the only other time Tennessee's played 1-2 was in the national championship with Florida State. So, like, you keep winning, good stuff keeps happening to you.
Speaking of good stuff, where are we going to start? Because there was so much good stuff. Like I said, I didn't come prepared, so I wrote it down. I was going to write it down on the computer, but every time I opened the tab, we both went kung fu, and so we're going to have to. I'm going to have to engage. You have a good memory, but me, I'm going to have to actually work to keep it up in here. So let's just count the ways, and I'll start because you can hit cleanup better than I can. So I'll get a base hit or two.
You got speed coming out of the gate, speed on the base path. Yeah.
There we go. All right. So College Game Day, second time this season. You had all those guys gushing. Now, usually when they go to a town, they're going to say, "Oh, this is fantastic." But you could tell from this, at least I think you could tell. Maybe it was just because I wanted to hear it, and that's what they do. But I think you could tell that this was really something special, that they were surprised at just how good the atmosphere was there. You had Peyton Manning as a guest picker and playing off that new guy, whoever that new guy is. I guess he's a former teammate of Manning. I hadn't tuned in at all this season, so he was a surprise to me. But he's good. He's fun.
I'm enjoying listeners of our own podcast that might be coming across this for the first time that are like, Joel doesn't know who Pat McAfee is.
I don't know.
Long-time listeners and readers are like not surprised at all that Joel doesn't know who Pat McAfee is. So,
all right, so explain that to me, just as a sidebar.
McAfee was he was a kicker, a punter at West Virginia, and then he was a punter at the Colts with Manning. Okay. So he had a long and distinguished career as an NFL punter, and then in the last, I don't know how many years it's been now, has remade himself post punting as just an entertaining media mogul guy. Has got a it just shows up in my Twitter feed. He's got a radio show deal with somebody that pays him a ton of money. He's for wrestling fans in the crowd. He's on SmackDown, or not during college football season, but He's on SmackDown on Friday
Oh,
nights.
okay.
We've previously on this podcast played How Many Wrestlers Can Joel Name? We have too much to talk about with Alabama probably to play that game tonight, but and then now he's on Game Day every week. So yes, that's Pat McAfee. Now we have to see if Joel will come back from the frozen photo over there. Looks like no. So that means I wonder if I can just sit here and keep talking to myself and you're going to hear any of this. Maybe I can pull us up on Twitter and see if anybody can actually see me still talking. People that followed us for a long time would also not be surprised to be like, yeah, they don't have it put together on the podcast. The whole theme of this is just laughter. Yep, just me. Joel's going to come back in just a second. In the meantime, we can talk about like McAfee's got a nice connection too. That's I think in part how they got Bianca Belair on there.
On campus for that. I didn't watch that one. I saw a clip of Paul Feinbaum in a coffin. Don't know what the story was there, but that was cool. Cool. And so that was just the pregame. Josh Heupel said that the Vol Walk was, more than he ever could have expected. So, hey, you're back. All right. Could you hear me? While I was talking?
I could hear you at the end there talking about that. I have no idea like which one of us could be heard. When you go back and listen to this, one of us is going to be there and one of us is not going to be there. So I can't wait to see who that is.
So, all right, then we get to the game, and we have number 3 versus number 6 going in, and we go out and we just we storm out to a nice big lead. I don't know what's going through your mind at the time, but mine is we're going to need a bigger lead, like the old Jaws thing. Because they're coming back, and then it turned into a tennis match, and it had all the drama at the end. Jalen Hyatt had 5 touchdown passes out of 6 catches for 207 yards. I think I got that right. Hendon Hooker is now leading the Heisman Trophy watch list. So as the folks on Source were joking this morning, well, now the question is, who's he going to finish second to?
That's right.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got. We got a rushing the field, which if you have not seen a picture yet, you have to see the picture. The post-game coverage, when they went back to the studio at CBS, they just showed the stadium while the guys talked for 10 minutes. And it was just incredible. And they were talking about how incredible it was. This is once in a lifetime. Things we did on Saturday. There is a very long list, and I'll probably defer to you, Will, on this, of things that have not happened since before you were born, maybe, or before your kids were born. Basically, when I still had black hair, lots of stuff like that. There were just a ton of things that were firsts, and the number of superlatives for this game is just it's almost innumerable. They just keep coming at you. So I'm going to let you sweep up, and I'm sure I missed a bunch. So what else we got?
No, those are all. I mean, it's the whole day, and I've really enjoyed. There were 101,000 people in there. People said, and I believe it, haven't been in there, that there were another 50,000 people just on campus. They do the watch party now in Volunteer Village where you can come and get. There's a great video on that where you can come and get the ending spoiled for you, where they're all looking at the screen, but the CBS feed is of course behind real life,
Yeah.
so they're spoiled by the loud noise and then the fireworks coming from the stadium to know that the kick went in. That's a whole topic of, if he had missed that kick, or if it had just been 3 yards longer and then we lost in overtime, we would be doing the Zapruder film imagery on, did that kick get blocked or not. There's another great, again, I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're like me, of like, there's a billion ways to interact with post-game reactions and things like that through social media. And that part is entirely new.
Yeah.
Again, if you're a young person, nothing will make you sound older than, this is all back in my day stuff. But in 1998, there was no Jumbotron. So when he missed the kick, you didn't see it again till you got home. And you only saw it if you probably didn't see it again until the next day, unless you saw it on the 2 a.m. Sports Center. So, there's a whole just 2022 versus 1998 component. But again, that's the thing. We opened this by talking about we were never able to get separation from we were never able to know that we were out of the wilderness. And now it's like we went straight. I mean, there's lots of good Book of Joshua analogies we could do here of like, they're coming out of the wilderness and they are taking the promised land and taking no prisoners. That it's just an incredible thing. And the comparisons now, I thought we'd spend a lot of time this year, if Tennessee did a good job, we'd spend a lot of time this year talking about, all right, we've reached 9-3. We've reached 2007, 2006 range. We're still not good enough to beat Alabama. We're still not good enough to beat Georgia. What's the next step for us? Like this is the step. This is it. Because right now, if you want to talk about the national championship, you can.
Yeah.
And the structure is different since the last time we were good, because now you've got a 14 playoff. If we lose to Georgia in a close game, if you want to talk about the national championship, you still can. So, I mean, it's just all that is on the table. You mentioned game day, and this is the last, because again, we could talk about any one of these things for forever. The most emotional I got, and you don't get to pick, like it sneaks up on you and these kinds of things. The most emotional I got the whole day was the opening. I was watching it on TV. I wasn't there. My nephew had his birthday party in the morning. Let me just say also, my son had his 5th birthday party the morning of the Florida game, and my nephew had his 6th birthday party the morning of this game. So the Shelton family, we're on a roll, baby. I got no birthdays in November in our household, so someone else throw a party for 5 to 6 year olds the morning of the Georgia game, and maybe we'll keep winning. But so I wasn't there. I was just watching it. But the opening of game day, and like you said, they were just here. But that Florida game was so much about us, so much about Tennessee trying to do a thing and all that. And now, even before we won, this game now is about everything, because Tennessee is back in that hunt. And it really made me emotional, not even watching the scene so much, but just listening to Reese Davis, who did a phenomenal job with this, listening to them talk about not just what this game used to mean, but what it means right now. And that sense of Tennessee being in the biggest college football conversation you can be in. And with game day, it's such a stupid thing, because I don't like country music, please keep listening to this podcast, but I don't. And so
Your
the
opinion
coming
is
to see
wrong.
say what?
Your opinion is wrong. It's okay.
Yeah, well, but like the coming to your city and all that stuff,
Yeah.
I don't care about that. But what I know is we used to be in that song,
Yep.
and then they took us out.
Yep.
Because Rocky Top Tennessee didn't matter. And so I don't know why, man, but that was the most emotional I got all day, was just watching that and then thinking about how long it had been since Tennessee was in the big conversation. And that was before we won. So yeah, and we're even deeper in it now. So again, a great week to be playing the Skyhawks of Tennessee Martin. So we can just continue to talk about these things.
Yeah. I'll add one more thing to the list. I don't know if you saw this or not, or caught my reference to it last night, which may not have been a good night to remind you of it. But I think it was Jeremiah Crawford. You know what I'm talking about here?
I do.
Okay. So the guy, just in case anybody hasn't seen it, which I'm sure you probably already have, but still, let's talk about it because it was cool. They're like in as close to a huddle as Tennessee ever really gets,
Right.
right? And Jeremiah Crawford he took a step just away from the huddle, and he like just vomited this stream of Gatorade, I guess.
Yeah, straight Gatorade. That's what he called it earlier today on Twitter. Straight Gatorade, which is not surprising. Yeah.
Straight Gatorade. He just vomited it. Right. He didn't bend over, which you usually do. That's the proper form for puking, right? He just stood straight up and he puked it out his face mask. And then he looked at Alabama and he just nodded his head. He said, "Yep, I just did that. And I got another 12 ounces of half-baked Gatorade with your number on it." So
Yeah.
that was so cool.
That's what we full disclosure, we were going to record this podcast last night and we did not because I was throwing up. And that's what shout out to Chris Penley, former Rocky Top Talk writer, who, when I said, "Hey, we're not going to do this tonight," that's the first thing he said is, "If our offensive line can pull through this, you can too." So I'm okay with not being as spry as those guys on bouncing back from that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of these highlights, just little more in depth. So we already talked a lot about game day in the pregame, and you started off by saying that everybody was ready 25 minutes beforehand, which means the digital ticketing process is probably working now. It wasn't for the first game. But you said everybody came prepared with their cigars. So there was hope in their pockets and ready to go, and not just in their minds, right? But I wasn't able to go. And to be honest, even after the win that night, I needed a session or something because everybody's talking about, this is like once in a lifetime. And you know what? I didn't see it. I wasn't there. And I didn't go. I had a chance. I had tickets to the 2007 James Will Hoyt redemption game. I didn't see that one either. I was at 2016 Florida, so that was cool. But anyway, you could still feel through the television the atmosphere, because it was orange out. It was pure orange. It looked awesome on TV. You saw everybody, storming the field afterwards. and you just sat there and watched it happen. You knew what was happening. You watched the nobody hurt by the giant jagged piece of metal. And then you kind of laughed at, well, what are they going to have to do to get that out of the stadium and into the river, right? I don't know if you heard this on the Vols Network broadcast, but they were just riffing because they were waiting forever for their regular post game. So they were just sitting there talking the whole time, and Bob Kessling goes, "Yeah, so they took the goalpost down, but they can't get it through the portals or whatever he was calling them." He said, "But I'm sure we got some engineering students down there working on that right now." So, but anyway, yeah, the whole atmosphere was just great. So you tell me, and I'm going to plug my ears so it doesn't make me more depressed. Just how good was the atmosphere when you were there?
Well, I'll say this, and I was going to make this point earlier. Even for people that weren't there, whether it's the people in Vol Village or just people that are watching at home, or people that have got great televisions and all that good stuff. One like this, there's such a shared communal experience with it. I really learned this a lot. Man, in '98 I was a senior in high school, and I was extraordinarily fortunate to get to go out and be at the national championship game. I had nothing to do with that. Shout out to my parents. I wasn't out there mowing lawns to try to pay off tickets or anything like that. I just I'm very fortunate, blessed, lucky, whatever, to be able to have been there. But that when we won, I really enjoyed hearing from my friends who were back home, and many of them who were together watching the game. And like, that was a whole other, I didn't get to be with them, so like there was a whole other side of that, and big wins like this, wherever you were and whatever you were doing, I think it still really resonates. I not to make this whole thing too much about us or anything like that, but I'm sitting here talking to you on a podcast right now because I started writing a blog when I left Knoxville and lived by myself, and was looking for ways to connect. And so we did some of those. I was at like some of the big wins early when I was blogging, but when we had 13 men on the field against LSU, I had to try to work that out with, the comments section at Rocky Top Talk. So I think the big ones like this, you kind of find your way to where you were. I remember, Joel, you telling that story about a salesman coming to your house and trying to sell you something during the Arkansas game in '98. So,
yeah,
you remember these things even if you weren't there. It was, again, there's really just no good comparison. And if people know me, I love a good comparison. I was a history major, but we've reached the point where the national level conversations that Tennessee was in, the last time they were in any of those, all of that was about the Gators, and everything you did was going to be defined by, did you beat them or not? And when you did, you were on your way. 98, 2001, even a little bit in 03 and 04. If you beat them, you were on your way. And if you didn't, you were just playing catch up the whole time. So those crowds, those Florida crowds, even the ones we didn't win, 96, 98, Jabbar Gaffney game in 2000, Rex Grossman in 02, the Will Hoyt kick that we mentioned in 04, the 1-point loss with Tebow in 06, all those games felt like life and death. If we lose this, it's done. And our hearts had been broken by those guys enough times that you kind of were protected. This was just such a different animal. I mean, we have not been close with these guys. Shout out to 2015. where we took the lead briefly, and then very quickly they took it right back, and then that game was kind of over. The Terrence Cody play in 2009 got lots of recognition here again during this game. Other than that, it's just constantly getting crushed. Coming into the game, as we joked last week, being anywhere between a 21 and a 38-point underdog. So I don't even really think of this as a streak until you realize you could actually do it, because it was just Bama being Bama and Tennessee going through what Tennessee was going through. So it made for a really unique atmosphere. And I think a lot of people were ready. People brought cigars and all that. But so much of the atmosphere to me in there became about the quality of the game that was unfolding in front of you. And the still relatively unique thing of feeling like you have to score a touchdown every time you have it, but your offense can kind of do that. And it just felt, and I told my wife right away when we stopped him on the opening drive, I said, that's one. Like we should, let's keep track. How many times are we stopping these guys? And I think that's gonna, in these big games, I think with Heupel, that's gonna keep being a thing of how many do we need, or not even how many do we need. What's the serve? Where are we ahead? At one point when it was 28-10, Tennessee was +2. We had stopped them twice. They stopped us once, but then they fumbled the punt, so you wipe that one away. And man, when you're +2 in whatever, we'll figure out what to call it, +2 in successful possessions, this team will run away from anybody, as we've seen. But Bama got that back. So I think a great deal of the atmosphere was the quality of the game that unfolded. And people that want to compare it to 98 Florida, when we won that game at the end, that's a game Tennessee won because they turned them over 5 times. That's a game that had 5 years of just heartbreak and feeling like you had a team that was good enough to win every year and never even really coming close, not really, to beating those guys. And then doing it all of a sudden, there was such validation in that. This game was exhausting. It was exhausting. And that the last, when Alabama was coming down to kick the field goal, my heart was beating so fast that in my brain, in the midst of all this, I was thinking, am I having a medical event? Like my heart was beating so fast. And I would imagine, just watching it at home, if you're invested in Tennessee, you got that sense too. So I kudos to both teams, kudos to the rivalry, all that stuff. But a lot of the atmosphere, man, was a dynamite football game, and one where, unlike 98 Florida or some of these others, you can sit down and rewatch that whole thing. I know because I've done it. It's long. It's 3 hours and 55 minutes, plus CBS's excellent post-game coverage. But, people don't tend to sit back and watch 98 Florida. People don't watch a lot. Even 2016 Florida, you're probably going to watch all of the second half. But unless you just want the full prologue, you're not going to watch the first half of that game.
Yeah.
So it really, it's 2001, 2004 Florida, those kinds of games, just such a high level. And I think that had as much to do with the atmosphere as, if not more so, than anything else.
Yeah. It's weird because you almost have to be a long-term Tennessee fan to really understand, to really appreciate it. I'm sure there's some people that enjoyed the game. It was a big game. It was an exciting game, right? But like, for instance, I got like a text from the South African friend I've mentioned several times on this podcast that, he's like, oh, how about the Vols, right? Or the Vols, or, whatever. But, and I was like, yeah. And so I sent him some of the pictures I sent him a picture of the field being just covered. You could not see green. And and then the goalpost coming down, and he was like, and like I said, I took him to the first game, and so he understood this is really cool, right? But that was Akron, right? A little different,
Ball
I think.
State, yeah.
Ball State, sorry. Well, like, who cares,
Same
right?
thing.
Right. So, I don't blame him for this, but he was like, he was, he said, they know that they haven't won the cup yet, right? And so first, he's still stuck in rugby, right? Where I guess that's what you win in rugby. I don't know. His wife thinks that's the only real man sport, by the way. So anyway, but he says that, and I'm thinking, how do I describe this? How do I explain this? And I was like, no, but we did just beat the team that won 6 of the last 13 national championships. We did just get past them. We did just beat a team that has mostly crushed us for 15 years straight. And somehow it remains a rivalry, So it's really hard to explain to people that have not, as Brian Cook said in one of our magazines many years ago, sometimes you got to pay the mortgage. And, you just make a payment, you make a payment, you make a payment, and it turns into a trudge. And you do that for many years, and finally it pays off. And that day, that's a good day. And as they said something else on Sports Source today, I think it was Pennington reading a text he got from Daniel Hood, where he said, 2 years from now, when we're always good, we're not going to storm the field when we beat Alabama. And he said, nobody ever storms the field at Alabama, because they're winning all the time. And so the point is there that this is a special moment precisely because of the long agony of futility, So anyway, I think that's what contributed to the atmosphere. I enjoyed watching everybody afterwards. It was just a really special night, even from alone in my little TV room. So we're 40 minutes in already, and we've talked about one of the what I called innumerable cool things about this game. So this is going to be a really long podcast. Well, we'll see how long this Restream program from Ukraine actually lasts. But let's talk about Jalen Hyatt. First, dude's got cool hair. I like his hair. All right. So, I mean, how do you make sense of the fact that everybody knows he has to be the first go-to guy after Cedric Tillman is not going to play, right? And he only catches six balls. He got the ball 6 times. That's not very much. But he had 207 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's a lot. I mean, that's amazing. And how do you get that guy that open and that behind the secondary against Nick Saban and his defense? It's just amazing. So, I love seeing the picture of him and what was it, Joey Kent or Peyton Manning or both of them.
Yeah, I mean, with everybody wants their picture with that guy, right?
That's right. Yeah, it took him like 15 minutes to get off the field. But yeah, I mean that was a game for the ages for him, man. And then to hear him today, I to him today last night. You know, he's whatever Heupel is doing to those guys psychologically, it is working. Because he's like, yeah, it was Hook finding me. It was the play calls. I was just doing my thing. I was locked in and had a good game and getting back to work Monday. You know, but I mean, he's going to be able to look when he's old and gray and only sits and talks about sports. He's going to look back on that and say, "I did that, man. That was a good day. Remember that time when I did that thing? That was cool." That was a really bad imitation of the Saturday Night Live character, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I just think too, there's going to come a point when, and Daniel Hood said that. Mark Nagy on Twitter had a great thread on this too. It won't always be this way. There's going to come a time when we lose a game. Hopefully not this year, but there's going to come a time when we lose a game, and we are going to find ourselves tempted to say, "How come we didn't have anybody wide open today?" Like it's just the easiest thing in the world that we're out there doing, and it's going to be dangerous for us to assume that these parts are interchangeable. To assume, I know we got Nico coming in, but to assume that Hendon Hooker is just easily replaceable. Alex Golish could make a lot of money right now as a head coach somewhere, not an offensive coordinator. I know Heupel is the guy, but again, we're going to run into the risk of assuming that this is much easier than it actually is.
It's because it looks so easy.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are doing exactly that. They make it look so easy. Hendon Hooker, since at least Tyler Bray, and probably further back than that, when he lets it go, I just believe something great is going to happen every time. It's like, watching Larry Bird or Steph Curry or one of these guys where it's like or Chris Lofton, when they let it go, I am confused when it doesn't go in.
Yeah.
So, and not just Hyatt, in the second half yesterday, Ramel Keaton made a stupid great catch. He was out of bounds, but I mean, it was an unbelievable catch. Yeah. And it was just like, well, he didn't stay in bounds. I mean, like, these guys are doing things that, again, we haven't seen around here in a long time. And Jalen Hyatt, to do that against the Nick Saban defense. Again, I wrote this in my post game. I got a 2001 LSU joke off. That's how you know we've fully come back.
But I enjoyed that one, by the way.
In the regular season matchup with LSU that year, it was like, and that was a tight game too. And Tennessee needed a first down late in that game to help put it away. I think we won like 26-18. It was a weird score, but we needed a first down to put it away. And there was a timeout called. And me and my friends were all looking at each other and we're like, well, it's going to Kelly Washington. Everybody on the face of the earth knows that. And they threw it to Kelly Washington for a first down. And like, I am amused, clearly, that Tennessee could just go to that same well so often against a Nick Saban defense and just continue to do it. Again, that's why you're never – it's going to be true now when we play Georgia. We're going to have to be behind by a lot before you give up on us.
Yeah.
And that is, again, all of these are old reflexes. If you've been following Tennessee long enough, we had these reflexes. Used to have them. Now, no matter how strong those reflexes were about we're always going to be in the game and all that stuff, I've never seen a guy have – no one's ever seen a guy at Tennessee have 5 touchdowns in the same game. The old record was 3. He broke it and then won. So, but, I mean, you put that on a list with anything. With the Kelly Washington game, the best Peerless Price in the national championship game had 4 for 199, and he had what is probably the most important play in Tennessee football history. But that was a game with a great defense where Tennessee scored 3 touchdowns, and one of them was a pick six, Dwayne Goodrich. So they scored 2 offensive touchdowns, and bombs to Peerless Price set up one and scored the other one. Like, he was the whole offense. Whereas this, I don't know that Alabama's got a better defense than 98 Florida State, but Alabama's got a good defense, and this was like, that doesn't matter. And I mean, he's running wild and free out there. And so Cedric Tillman is going to come back and play at some point, I think. Like, there's so much more that I think it's tantalizing what more could be out there for this offense.
All right, I'm changing the topic for the next one here. So just pretend that you're not done speaking.
Sure.
While I finish typing.
What else do you want to talk about? The at the end of the game, when we're talking about the atmosphere and all that, my heart was beating super fast and all that stuff. I'm sure everybody else was too. And when that the kick, I learned at 98 Florida, it's still true. If you go back and watch the YouTube, what kick was. We sit in the north end zone. The 98 Florida kick and the Chase McGrath kick were in the south end zone. 98 Florida, because Collins Cooper didn't miss that kick by much, and that was. You watch the fans behind the goal, and they'll tell you, right? They'll know before anybody. Those fans right behind the goalpost know first if it's in or out. You see that with Collins Cooper. So I told my wife when Bama was kicking at our end, I was like, watch these guys right here next to the goalpost. They'll tell the goalposts go crazy. The kick is no good. McGrath's kick, nobody knew. And so I was like, watch the fans. They'll tell you for sure. And then it's like nothing until you see the ball go through. And then the telltale sign, whenever anybody asks what's the loudest moment, 98 Florida, I remember turning to my dad and saying he missed it and not hearing the words come out of my mouth. This one, when I saw that kick was good, I like collapsed onto my wife, like just exhaustion, just like collapsed. And then everybody's going everywhere. My wife had her sunglasses on her head and they got knocked off. And she, like grabbed me and tried to say my sunglasses, and I couldn't hear a word she said, literally. And so like, it was this frantic, there go my sunglasses. I can't understand you. What, like, it was just, that's the only 2 times that has happened of I cannot hear these words at all. So,
that is so cool. Yeah. All right. So I'm done with this. So here's the new question.
Good question. So good, in fact, that I may have chased Joel away. Well, if you're still hearing me on this podcast and not frozen Joel over there, how much better is Georgia's defense than Alabama's? That's a great question. We could try to pull up the SP Plus stuff and take a look at it and see. We'd start there with have these guys played anybody yet that really jumps off the page at you? Not Auburn, right? Oregon in the opener looks like such a different team now than what they were previously. So I don't know about that. I would say we seem certain that Georgia's defense is not as good as it was last year. There for a minute and gone again, perhaps. Back to just me. All right. Go for it.
Here we go. All right. So we were going to talk about what this was the biggest win since whenever. So I don't necessarily want to skip that, but let's answer it in 30 seconds. I mean, it's got to be. Well, I'll let you take it since you're the history guy.
It has to be 2001 Florida for now. 2001 Florida, just the calendar. You had the swamp history there too, but 2001 Florida, that was the first week of December. So you knew at that point you were 60 minutes away from playing for the national championship. Obviously, that didn't go well the next week against LSU, but you're just closer to it. So if Tennessee loses to Georgia and then we're stubs their toe against Kentucky and finishes 10-2, I don't know that we'll look back at this and say it was bigger than 2001 Florida, but it's in the conversation I would say it is right now. It is Tennessee's biggest win since 2001 Florida, and stay tuned. It might be bigger than that.
Okay, so Alabama was supposed to have an excellent defense. They weren't quite as good as they had been in the past when they were number one in every defensive category.
Right.
But they were still top 8 in most categories. Still very good. So stats. Am I kung fuing again?
Yeah, I still got you though.
Okay, all right. So I haven't looked at the stats yet, but I have a feeling that Georgia's defense is even better. At least scoring defense, I know is. They're like 9 points or something. So just eyeball test. What do you think? Are we going to have the same kind of game against Georgia, or is Georgia's defense more likely to throw up a roadblock on scoring our regular 45 points?
So where I was going while you started talking about that was good old fashioned SP plus and trying to look at it there. And since I've looked at that previously, Bill Connolly posted the box score for the advanced box score for Tennessee and Alabama. And one thing he points out is Bama, Hendon Hooker had way more time than we thought he was going to have. Some of that is Tennessee's offensive line being really good. Some of that is Bama didn't blitz as much as maybe someone thought they would. Or again, like one good thing here, and this would be true of Kirby Smart a little bit too, Bama's used to winning. So this need to adjust and do something different takes some time sometimes. If you think about other teams have been fortunate to beat them. There's a script to beat those guys. Multiple missed field goals, multiple turnovers, all that stuff. A&M did that to them last year. But if you look at the teams like 2019 LSU, but especially those Hugh Freeze Ole Miss teams, Saban was a slow learner on those guys because those Ole Miss teams got them twice and almost got them a third time. Now, since then, Saban has learned, and Alabama hired Kiffin, became that destructive force to do all that. But man, if you're used to winning, you just, by definition, you trust your stuff, right? Because it wins. So one would wonder, and I think this is I can't speak for Bill Connolly, but I think this is a little bit of what he's talking about here. Is Georgia going to look at this film and say, all right, we got to blitz this guy more? And if they do, how will I thought our pass protection was really, really good. If it sees more pressure, how will we adjust? How will we, make those changes and do that? What we can know for sure is Georgia's defense is not as good as it was last year. And last year, Tennessee scored 17 points, which was a feat at the time on those guys. But also, Tennessee had 2 drives inside the Georgia 40 that ended on 4th down in the second half of that game. So we were closer, especially easier for us to say now, right? Now that we're number 3 in the country. We were closer than we might have gotten credit for to putting up more numbers on those guys last year when they did have a much better defense. So I am getting distracted on Twitter while I'm looking for this.
That's what Twitter does.
That's especially right now where I'm like, have I seen this video? Have I seen it more than once? Georgia's defense is 4th in SP plus. Bama's defense is 10th, but that's in part because they just got steamrolled by us. So, in the realm of good defenses, so on and so forth, who I'm looking for scrolling down the list is the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky's defense is 7th. So you might get a little primer, here in a couple weeks before we move on to the Dogs. So, Kirby's a good coach. Those guys have got good players. They'll watch. I know I sound like a coach saying they'll watch the film and make adjustments, but that's one thing I'd put money on is those guys are going to come more often at Hendon. And how are we going to adjust from that point?
One thing happened, them not being able to get much pressure is something that Tennessee did intentionally. And it's also part of their identity is that they go fast, right? So there's not as many substitutions, and they intentionally go fast on second down so that if they don't make it, the other team can't put in their pass rush specialists, which is what Will Anderson is. So he may have been in on earlier downs more than I thought, but I know that they have this special, what they were talking about, this cheetah package or something, which is their pass rush. So when they get you into third and passing situations, they roll those guys in. They're fresh, they're specialists, and they do what they do. They destroy you. But when they're on the sideline, they can't do that. What you got is a bunch of tired fat guys that have failed on first and second down, right? So I don't know if Georgia does that. If they substitute an entire new line on third down, but that's something maybe to look for and watch.
Well, I wonder too. And again, we gotta play Kentucky first. But I wonder with Georgia when they've looked bad this year, they've been sleepy to me. The game at Mizzou, even the Kent State things, that's some sleepiness. Those dudes won't have that problem against us.
No, they won't be sleepy.
Yeah, and they have not beaten us enough times. This isn't Bama or Florida. We beat them in 15 and 16. We also wiped the floor with them in 6, 7, and 9. So, they remember that stuff, I promise you, and are not taking as much as a defending national champion can do. They're not taking that stuff for granted. So they would enjoy putting it to us when we're good. They would enjoy putting it to us very much because the truth is they didn't do that at all until the old hobnail boot when we were good the last time.
Yeah. All right, we just got a few minutes left, so let's get to the win total machine. I have not looked at it myself. I know there's several entries in there already. I'm assuming that you have looked at it, or at least more than I have. So, what are things looking like for the remaining games, especially the big ones, Kentucky and Georgia?
Yeah. So the win total machine, of course, becomes the deeper you get into the season. The boundaries of it come in closer because you've got real data, which in this case Tennessee is 6-0. So the first thing I looked at, it's only been on our site for a day, but the first thing I looked at before we started this podcast was where's the Georgia number, and I'll go back and track it before Friday to post this week again. Great to be playing Tennessee Martin to say how have we seen the Bama number rise over the course of the year. The Bama number was at 38.3% going into kickoff. Georgia last week was at 29%. So right now, Georgia is at 42.6%. So we've already seen a jump from Tennessee fans giving the Vols a 30% chance to win in Athens to now we're creeping up 42, 43 to, getting closer to 50-50 or at least 50-50, but you're playing on the road. So that's the big one there to me. I'm looking at Kentucky, and I'm looking for anything with a 5 in front of it. I mean, most of these are the lowest I'm seeing on Kentucky is 65%, and the average as of Monday evening at 10:15 is 75%. So fans are giving Tennessee a 75% chance to beat Kentucky. I'll be, we're not going to learn anything. They're off this week, and we've got FCS. So as long as nobody gets hurt, we figured out everything we need about those two teams. So I'll be curious to see where that line is. But at this point, remember this thing started. We were at 8.03 wins in the preseason, which was in its nature there almost exactly a way of saying we believe Tennessee's chances of going. We believe that 8-4 is the most likely outcome, but 9-3 is just as likely as 7-5. So 7-5 was right there as like what folks believed was the second most likely outcome. Which seems like a long, long time ago.
Okay. So yeah, you are both Kung Fu and Chipmunk at the same time. So you're Kung Fu Chipmunk, which is awesome. And so I have the hat guy queued up and ready to go, but I'm afraid to run him. So because if I do, we're both going to be Chipmunk Kung Fu artists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this little I'm going to play this little video while he runs and just see what happens. So just enjoy this moment of zen. If you've got YouTube TV, you know what I'm talking about. So hold on. All right, he's done. So using comps, it doesn't look good at all, like Georgia, and because it says Georgia gets 37 points, which they usually get. Let's see, their scoring offense is 41 points, so it sounds about right. But the problem is their defense is really good, and so it is showing that we only score 14, and that I don't think that's right, because we just played out and we scored 52, right? So I'm going to run it with one comp, which would be Alabama, and just see what happens. So this time I'm going to just risk the Chipmunk thing. So we'll keep talking while he's going. But
I mean, that's where this is going.
It won't let me do it.
It won't let you do it with one comp.
The Chipmunk? Yeah,
no.
It will not let me do it with one.
What I was going to say is that's the thing with Tennessee is there is no comp for us, right? I mean, that's where we would want this conversation to go.
Yeah. But if it's just Alabama, it's not going to be automatic here, but Alabama's what is Alabama's scoring defense? I'd have to look that up. All right, so never mind. That's going to be really boring on a podcast to sit there and watch me do that. But whatever I'm going to guess that their defense is probably in the 16, 17 point range, something like that. And so we scored 100. We scored 52 points. So if it's 18, let's say it's 18, then 34 divided by 18, we scored like double. So those numbers are not working. So this is why I use the machine. Just to be honest. So I need to reconfigure it so it will do one comp because I can't do math on my own. So anyway, the point is that what if Alabama's only given up 18 points and we scored 52 on them, then that's more than it's going to be if you run it against three comps. Three comps generally spits out, 2 or 3 comps generally spits out about double what the normal is. So it's just double's not right with Georgia. So it's just not going to happen. I will put those numbers once I actually run them and don't try to spit them out of my nose on a live stream. But we'll put them on the blog later this week so you can see them. But anyway, I'm interested in seeing. Maybe nobody else is, but hey, I'm interested to see what that is, and I'm gonna use it for my input on the win total machine. So, but yeah, I mean, you were chipmunk for part of that, but I'm guessing that we're basically upwards of somewhere between 10 and 11 generally right now.
Yeah, so it is the preseason conversation was 8.03, so is 9-3 more likely or 7-5? Right now, and this is just one day, right now it's at 10.93 wins. So that means it's 11-1 is easily the most likely outcome. But you've got the conversation of such a stupid sentence. Which is more likely, an undefeated season or 10-2? Like 10-2 is on the precipice of being disappointing. So it's wild. But yeah, that's where we're at. 42.5% against Georgia, 75% against Kentucky, and the rest are, we would say is close enough to 90% that it shouldn't really register. So yeah, we'll see. Again, not going to learn much about Kentucky, but we'll see what we can learn about Georgia and about Tennessee before we get to that one in a few weeks.
Yep. All right, for the audio version, I'm going to sign off. This has been the Game Day on Rocky Top podcast. Appreciate everybody listening. Thank you for tuning into the live stream. If you did that, we will try to do the live stream, a little more regularly and maybe add some folks if I can figure out how to turn every machine off in my house before and just reserve all the bandwidth to me. So we may try that, and we'll try to post it beforehand too, so you can actually watch it live, and you can communicate via chat. And I might even post a link because apparently we can get up to 10 people on here. So if you feel like joining in, maybe we'll even let you in if we trust you. So we'll see. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And this has been the Game Day on Rocky Top podcast. And this is the bonus coverage. So I had another question here, but first, what I meant to say before we signed off on the audio was apologies again for the wonkiness on the video and the sound at points. As we say up here in the left-hand corner above Will's head, we are standing with Ukraine. We are using a Ukrainian software company for this and paying them full price. And so hopefully they're able to stay in business while they're over there covering their heads. So prayers for them. Let's see, what were we talking about before we signed off?
The win totals.
the win totals. So the craziness of the are we going to be undefeated thing?
Yeah, that it is right now. If you think it's right at 11-1, 12-0, and 10-2 are equally likely. So I mean that's a real thing right now. If you're like 10-2 would suck. That's just
Yeah.
it's a weird spot to be in.
You know what did suck? 2016.
It did.
And so I feel like maybe we should point out that we were coasting to uh, 10, uh, in 2016. We were at least coasting the championship game. And don't you think so? You disagree?
No, I think there's so many things about 2016. Let me start by saying this. I said this to our old friend Incipient Senescence on Twitter. And shout out to Kimberly was in that too. Old Rocky Top Talk friends when we were talking about the game after and comparing it to things. One great thing about this win and the bridge back to the national conversation is, at least for me, and it's why I made the 2001 LSU joke in the piece, is it helps me make peace with these huge moments that we had, like 2016 Florida and the Hail Mary the very next week, and have less bitterness about why that season didn't get us where we wanted to go, because now we're where we wanted to go. So one reason the 2001 LSU loss is at the top of the mountain is we never got back to the top of the mountain. So back when you're good, like again, if you've been following Tennessee from those days, the losses hurt more short term, like a lot more. But they don't last as long because what you tell yourself is, by God, we'll get them next time. And often we did. So it was nice. Like Cordero Patterson was at the game. And Cordero Patterson is a guy that was amazing here in 2012. He was only here 1 year, but he was amazing. But he is not on a team that's going to be. I mean, that's 10 years ago. This is the 10-year anniversary of the Kyler Bray, Justin Hunter, Michael Rivera. I'm going to write about that offensive line this week, because our offensive line, this is the best offensive line we've had since that group, the Jawan James and Tiny Richardson and Zach Fulton and those guys. But that team is not coming back to be recognized, right? But when you're doing what this team is doing, for me anyway, it helps me say, there's Cordero Patterson. That guy was awesome. And not feel the need to follow it up with, why didn't we win more games? Like, it's cool. We'll win games now. So all that to say, 2016, now I think there's a good, healthier way to look at that Florida win and the Hail Mary and say, man, those are great days. And great individual Saturdays. Yep. And I don't have to be so worried about why we couldn't get it all the way back there. So having said all that, there was still some anxiety the second half of that season, even before we lost to South Carolina, because if you remember, we were one up on Florida. We beat them, and then we lost to A&M and we lost to Alabama. And Florida was supposed to play LSU, and there was a hurricane. And they moved all of that. And so there was this angst of like, oh, they're stupid stuff that you say that you probably shouldn't say when people are trying to get away from a hurricane. Oh, they're cowards. They should play the game, all that stuff. So we had some built-in worry. And the other thing too is, this is why we like SP Plus. That 2016 team, they beat Appalachian State, but they were not good in that game. Nor were they good against Ohio when they won by 9. Virginia Tech threw it out because Virginia Tech fumbled 6 times in that game. You can't take anything from it, but like that stuff shows up play for play. And then it turns out later on in the year when a bunch of guys are hurt that they also were not good enough to beat or to stop, Vanderbilt or South Carolina. This Tennessee team, play for play, is playing at such a higher level than that team. Not even the fact that they beat Bama, but just the way they play. I worry much less about losing to Missouri or to Vanderbilt. Now, Kentucky's a top 20 team. So I put that in a different category than those 2016 losses, but that would be your last three games: Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. You would need to lose two of those to get on the level of what 2016 was. So that's a long bonus coverages for long answers. I'm give long answers anytime, you know me, but like I think that's just the main thing. I know it's a simple thing to say. I just think we're better and more trustworthy play for play now than we were then. But yes, we should not take. We're taking UT Martin for granted, but we definitely shouldn't take Kentucky for granted, and probably we shouldn't take Missouri and South Carolina for granted. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think the question is, can you win a shootout? Can you stop the other team? Can you keep the other team under 30? Because it just I don't know how they've done this to me, but you admitted it earlier too. You feel like when they get the ball, they're going to score. I mean, here was my thought process during the game. At the end of the game, Alabama was driving, and I was thinking, okay, they just need to stop them, and from like they just need to leave enough time. I wasn't really even thinking they need to stop them. They need to force them into a long field goal. They need to keep them out of the end zone. They just need to leave enough time.
Yep.
And so the fact that they missed a field goal with 15 seconds, I'm like, if they hit the field goal with 15 seconds, I'm thinking we can get into field goal range.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it's just if we want 40 yards, we take 40 yards. I don't know how they do it. I'm actually, I did watch during lunch one of the segments on Sports Source, and they had this new guy. I don't know if you've seen it. He's a former defensive coordinator for the Hokies. You probably know his name.
Was it Bud Foster?
No, it wasn't. No, it was more recent. It was for Fuente. So anyway, I think he's like from Knoxville, or he grew up a Vols fan or something, but he was the defensive coach. Maybe he wasn't the DC, but anyway, he walked through some of the ways that you keep getting Jalen Hyatt open against Nick Saban. And just one of the ways was just so simple, where you have the two receivers over on the sideline, and there's two guys covering them. And you like one of your guys against one of their guys. And if that guy's lined up on your guy, you go. And if he's not, then those guys, they just switch.
Yeah.
And then they cross, and you got the matchup you want. And if it's Jalen Hyatt against their weaker guy, he's going to just run past him into this wide open space that's created by two guys being on the other sideline. And the
Joel may have vanished from the bonus coverage. If it is just me again, that's really going to bother me that I can't remember who that Virginia Tech coach is. Which is why I'm trying to look
the box being all spread out.
So close.
And my internet just like gave up. It
Yeah,
just
you've vanished. I was still trying to find out who the Virginia Tech coach was.
yeah. See, that's why you shouldn't look up stuff, man.
Yeah,
You should trust your memory. I'm the one who needs to look up stuff.
my Virginia Tech memory is not as good. I promise.
I I'm the one who said the Will Hoyt kick was in 2007. So, thank you for correcting me and not calling me out like Gary Danielson does. Uh, I can't wait to get away from that guy. But anyway, so you may have missed that, but you might just have to go back and watch it because I don't want to repeat it in case it's already on here. I don't know. But anyway, so what off topic? What you got going on this week?
Lots of church stuff, which is always great. But I remember when we beat Florida in 16, my wife had a minor surgical procedure like 2 days later, and they had the game on in the lobby at the hospital, and I was like, "It's great, I'll watch this." Then I, went back and I watched that game like it was my part-time job that week, and I would like to do that. I've rewatched the whole thing once, but I would like to just continue to go back and rewatch it. But it's so long, and you got to watch all of it. I mean, like I really want to watch all of it. So I don't know that there'll be.
Yeah, and with the kids and stuff, you also have to. It means a late night,
Yes.
and when you get older, you realize that late nights are not your friend anymore.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I have a post. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that.
Yeah. So I didn't get to it today because, like I said, I'm still in my work clothes. I came home. Actually, I picked up Omi, and then I went to. I dropped her off at home, and one of the people living with us actually is going to get driver's license tomorrow, which is fantastic. So that was happy news. And then I went out to see a potential rental house, and then I came right here and I sat down in this chair without preparing anything, and we just winged a podcast in a live stream. So whether I get to that, I really hope to. It's pretty much done. I just got to write the words now. But basically, what it is
Yeah, that's the problem with these posts. Got to have the words in there.
They include words. But actually, this one is what I used to do when I used to do the stat rankings, just to see where we've improved, where we need to improve, that kind of stuff. And
that was going to be my question: is what's in the red with this team?
Defense,
Yeah,
pass defense, and stuff like that. But really, I think the key defensive categories, scoring is okay. So I think we're bend don't break, but don't let them get into the red zone. And when they get into the red zone, then the sidelines and the end zone are your friends, and you can turn up the pressure and put a little pressure on the corners because they have as much space to cover. So I think that's really the game plan. And penalties, not very good, but really, it's amazing to see. I have not done it game by game by game like I was doing in the past, but I have done it for the last 10 years. So you see, how many coaches back does that go to 2012?
Dooley. That's Dooley's last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Dooley,
So we got
Butch,
Dooley, and then we got a bunch of Butch, and then we got Pruitt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you have Heupel, and you can see a clear line of demarcation between the last 2 years, this year and last year, and everything else. And it's pretty Christmas green on offense. So
Somebody on Twitter earlier ran the I can't remember if this was Reed Carringer or somebody. Somebody ran the here's how many points Heupel has scored against Bama in 2 years. And then here's the total number of points. Like, I think Derek Dooley in 3 tries scored 27 points total against
yeah,
Alabama. Here's Butch, here's Pruitt. So, I mean, like, there's plenty of that to go around, and I would love in the offseason to get to the history major in me. Once you know you're out of the wilderness, would love to look back at the whole of it and say,
yeah,
what do we learn and all that stuff. So you may just want to read happy things in the off season, but I'm probably going to write that stuff anyway. So you don't have to read it. But we skipped over, the how does this team compare to 2006 and 2007? Right now, it's how do they compare to 1998 and 2001?
yeah.
So, that's fine. I'm happy to keep making those comparisons too.
Yeah. I'm also enjoying the contrast between something that drove me absolutely nuts for the past 10 years at least, where people would trot out after every bad game, people would trot out all these different new ways of saying how terrible we were. And that was really the game, was to find a new way, a new stat to express the same thing we already knew, which is that we were not good. But this is how not good we are, because since X date, we've only scored this many points, or we've only won this many games against top 10. And now we're doing the opposite, which is a lot more fun. It's like, let's come up with as many new and novel and fun ways to find out just how much we should be enjoying this team. So
I wrote a post, I think on this site, of I was getting very tired of that. Tennessee is and blah 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 against top 10 teams since 2006. It's like, do you know why? It's because we play Alabama and Georgia every year. So let's run the stats of who else is and whatever against Alabama and Georgia. Like, that is such a bogus and unfair, thing. But we've blown all that up now. So I mean, again, like the Georgia thing doesn't even feel like a streak to me, because not just that we beat them in 15 and 16, like we said, but that we have in the last 16 years, we have 5 wins against those guys. So it's not great, but it's not nothing either. So, that one doesn't feel like a streak in my book. So, yeah.
Yep. I am. I have forgotten what I am. So never mind. I was pulling up the hack guy code, because I'm going to add 1 as an option just to see what happens. It may not work because there may be other things that depend on this number, but let's see.
The hat guy code sounds like, I solemnly swear I will not throw a mustard bottle at anybody at this game.
Somebody told me that we're using packets now. I think I said that on the last one.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to reload this. All right. There we go. 1. And against Georgia. And we're going to do 1 comp and see what happens. He's working. He's thinking. And he comes up with basically the same thing. 35 to 15. And I just don't think that's right.
No, again, I know this is a undefeated top 5 feeling good about ourselves thing to say.
Yeah.
But there's no comp for us.
Yep.
Like whoever Georgia has played offensively, there's no comp for us. Whoever Georgia has played, they ain't played us, by God. Like, that sort of thing. So I think there's real truth in that of you just you cannot compare unless they're going to play Ohio State or they're going to play Bryce in the SEC championship game if they beat us. Like you just, there's a gap.
It just doesn't work. So I'm not even going to be able to post this week. I mean, because it says the Georgia scoring defense is 9 points, and it's most similar to Alabama. Do you know what Alabama's is? It's 18. And what was I using? 16 off the top of my head.
Something
so
in
it's
there, yeah.
Yeah, so it's 18. And so what that comes out to be is that we score almost 300% of what Alabama gave up, right?
They ain't
But
played us. That's right. I'm telling you.
right, but still Georgia's defense is only 9. So 300% of 9 is still only 18 points. Or what is it? 15.
Well, still though,
I'm
again,
rounding.
we're all rounding. It's okay. But
Yeah.
like Georgia's defense, you can I got no problem with Georgia's strength of schedule. They played Oregon. Oregon is good when they're not playing Georgia. So like I got no problem with their strength of schedule. But half of their stuff is Samford, Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean
Auburn.
We'll learn that. I know they lost, but the Gators offensively had their moments the other night. They're going to play Florida next week, so we'll get a little closer taste of. Now if they shut Florida out, I would be a little more concerned.
Yeah.
But
the number is actually 26. So, but still, it says Georgia 45. Then, so I don't know. It's just wrong. But the thing that worst case scenario to me sounds like would be Florida beating Georgia, and then we still lose to Georgia, and it's the tiebreaker.
yes,
yeah.
Well,
they'd have the head-to-head and go right.
Yeah, I wrote this in the win total thing today. The most complicated thing, if they beat us in a close game, and then they go to Atlanta, Bama wins out, and then Bama beats them. So in a non-division world, which is the world we're getting ready to go to, that's a 3-way tie for the SEC championship. We beat Bama, Bama beat Georgia, Georgia beat us. But in a division world, you don't get to make that argument. So what happens if you've got, from a playoff perspective, if you've got 12-1 Alabama, 12-1 Georgia, 11-1 Tennessee, you've got the winner of Ohio State and Michigan wins the Big Ten. Even if they've got one loss, they're going. They're Big Ten champions. They're going in. And then if you've got undefeated Clemson, I think we would get left out in that scenario. Even though we would in a very simple argument, we would have a 3-way SEC championship tie conversation. I would be worried that they would take Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson. So that's why when you're still undefeated and you think you can beat anybody, like Syracuse is probably not having this conversation right now, but we are. You don't have to worry about what other teams do until you lose. But along the way, if TCU wants to lose to Kansas State this week and UCLA wants to lose to Oregon, get those undefeated teams that are not Ohio State and Michigan, get those teams out of here. Because if Tennessee is 11-1 with a close loss to Georgia, no 11-1 team in the country will have as good of a resume as us. So we can still get in as long as there's not rogue undefeated teams hanging around. So that scenario for the committee would be a nightmare, and I just worry that we would end up on the wrong side of that. So will they really put 3 SEC teams in the playoff? That argument,
That's an interesting question. We should save that, because I would say that even if the evidence was clear that they should, they probably would not.
Yeah. But they definitely would not, to me, if you, again, let's just assume Ohio State or Michigan is in, even if they've got one loss, like the Big Ten champion is in. Tennessee's got a better resume than the loser of that game, because the loser of that game didn't beat Bama. Tennessee's got a better resume than anybody, including undefeated Clemson. But are they really going to put Tennessee? Are they really going to put Tennessee in there at 11-1 over 12-0 Clemson? No way, right? Like that's not happening. So, but the wild thing is, we could play Georgia once and Alabama twice before we even get to the playoff. Like, who else in college football has that in front of them? That's a unique Tennessee problem. Yep. So, that's one for later down the road of when you're watching this week. We control our own destiny until we lose in absolutely everything. But if you want to make it, if you want a little insurance, Kansas State beating TCU this week, Oregon beating UCLA, all that helps us clear the runway in case we need to make an emergency landing at 11-1. Just clear it, and that way,
Yeah. So why are you excluding Michigan and Ohio State from teams that we would like to lose?
Well, I just assume one of those teams is going to beat the other, and the other division in the Big Ten is like Purdue and/or Illinois might win it. So Wisconsin's bad. Iowa. That's the game this week. Is Ohio State's maybe just as good as ours offense against Iowa, who can't score. Who I'm not sure has scored as many points all year as we scored against Alabama. So, if you want Ohio State or Michigan to lose, if you want the winner of Ohio State and Michigan to have lost multiple other games, I just don't see it. So I think they would have a strong, like the winner of that game, assuming they don't stub their toe in the Big Ten title, is that team's going to the playoffs. Yeah. So unless you get total unforeseen weirdness, Michigan just wiped the floor with Penn State. Like I don't know who else is around there that's going to threaten either of those teams. But the loser of that game at 11-1 doesn't have a better resume than an 11-1 Tennessee team that beat Bama. So that work is done. So that's my thing is, would they take Ohio State, Michigan winner and 3 SEC teams that all have one loss? Not if Clemson's hanging around and is undefeated. But I think, to me, only undefeated would do it. You just can't make the argument, unless Georgia blows us out. You just can't make the argument to me that any other team with one loss would have as good of a resume as us.
Yeah. So, and maybe Michigan beats Ohio State or vice versa, and then gets beat by Illinois. So, all right.
That's an awfully big ask right there.
I'm going to start posting the TV schedule again so that we can actually have these conversations about the race. Who do we?
I put four of those games in the win total. I put Clemson and Syracuse play each other. They're both undefeated, but I mean, to me, if Syracuse wants to beat them, great, go for it. I don't trust Syracuse to keep winning. And then the other one, like, here's the real fun one this week is the CBS game, which is LSU and Ole Miss. So, like, again, when we're talking about resumes, it helps us now. It's another way you're back. Like Kentucky beating Mississippi State, that helped us. Now you want these rivals that you beat to win.
Yeah.
Unless you think Ole Miss can beat Bama and you'd like to see Lane Kiffin in the SEC championship game, which I'd like to do that. So, this is why I never win the picks. I never win the front office pool thing ever, because this is how I pick is what outcome will give me the most joy. And I'm picking that one. And that's not how life works. So,
Well, there will, I wonder, there would be some serious discussions about concessions at the SEC championship game. because I know they're cheap there, from what I hear.
They are.
So,
Yeah.
you can buy lots of extras, whatever your plans are. So,
Yeah.
all right, we have gone for 1 hour and 40 minutes, and I'm in my bedroom, and my wife is probably outside the door, like, being very patient.
Yeah. I have the exact same scenario happening here. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We should stop.
All right. Well, say hello to Alex. Blame it on me. I'm going to blame it on you.
That's
And
right. Yeah,
we'll
you can tell
all,
Angela it's my fault. Yeah, that's good.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, take care, man.
All right. See you next time.
All right. Bye.